Great. Okay, so good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us. I'm Becky, and I'm the CEO of the English Association, and I'm just really delighted to see you all this afternoon and welcome you to this session. A quick word about the English Association. We are a subject association and a learned society that was founded in 1906 to support, promote and defend the discipline of English studies. We cover all stages of education from primary and early years through to secondary and further education to higher education and beyond. And we cover all parts of the discipline across language, linguistics, literature and creative writing. Events like this afternoon's are made possible by the fantastic contribution of our volunteer speakers. So thank you so much to Leah and Ben and Abby for giving us their time so generously this afternoon. Our members of the English Association also make it possible to put on these events by paying their subscriptions. So if you would like to join us and help support the discipline, please do consider becoming a member. It costs just over £50 for a whole year to support our events, campaigning and advocacy work, and you get access to a range of member benefits, including online access to all our journals. Right, that is my bump out of the way. So I'll now hand over to Leah to be in charge of the rest of the session. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Rebecca. We have got a lot of ground to cover before our 45 minutes is up. So I'm Leah, consultant, presenter, author, part of the Opening Doors team. Opening Doors is the brainchild of Bob Cox. I kind of feel like I'm standing on his shoulders each time that I'm representing it, and he's with us in the Zoom room. So I salute you, sir, in the room. All of this only possible because of the research, the action research, the deep thinking of Bob. He needs a mention.
That's enough, Leah. That's enough. Go on, get on with it now.
Okay,
Thank
get
you.
on with it now.
Thank you.
The main focus of this session is about the development of teachers. Yeah, but I'm first going to go through actually how you can't really uncouple or decouple the development of pupils in your school and teachers, and then the two English leaders who are with us, Abby, who's at Polna Juna down in the New Forest, and Ben, who's at Richmond Hill, way up in Doncaster. We've got a great geographical spread. Will tell you more about that. What they're going to tell you is how they have developed the expertise of their staff. But I am going to whistle stop you through an Opening Doors unit, just because we might have people in the Zoom room this afternoon for whom the Opening Doors curriculum books, the four that are there and the initial one that's my background slideshow, if they are completely new to you and you don't know what we mean by an Opening Doors approach. So I'm trying to pack all of that in before we get to 5 o'clock. Let's see if we can get there. What we all share, Ben, Abby, Bob, myself, Angela and Julie, the other consultants, is this deep principled belief that ambitious, rich English can be made accessible to all children. We have deep, comprehensive teaching principles. So that's what really matters. But what Opening Doors has done for teachers is how can you make that work so that no child is left behind, all are developing. And there'll be interesting messages from Ben and Abby about actually who begins to accelerate first when you begin to start to use the Opening Doors strategies with deeply rich texts. So let's admit, we did say this was a primary session. Primary generalists, so-called. I think a lot of primary teachers I work with are more specialists than some of the secondary, but there we go. There's an aside. You're teaching so many subjects and now expected so much depth and expertise in those subjects. And even on top of that, then we say, and then you teach English. Now, this was just off the top of my head. English has become like a list of another 10 subjects. There's something that has happened since 2014 to disaggregate the subject into all these little silos. Yeah, all matter. But what we've seen on our travels more and more is busy teachers, they're stressed, leaders make a decision to buy a series of schemes. So one is on oracy and one's on writing and one's on grammar and one's on vocabulary, and hand those out to their teachers. It's planned, this will save you time. But the principles don't really hang together. The teachers are, feel like they're dancing through the week to try and fit all of this in. And English doesn't have a holistic the development of general language and literary capabilities starts to really kind of fragment and get lost. So that's another one of our beliefs and goals, I would say, is let's bring English back together as a subject. That in itself, not easy. This is my core slide, people, on that link between teacher and pupil development. So I've got the core of the slide there is the kind of headlines, the headline that came from a deep Education Endowment Fund review that was headed up by Robert Slavin not so far, not such a long time ago, about what global, right across the globe, what kinds of approaches are used within effective writing development programs. And there's that children learn together. There is deep challenge, but they reach for each other in a safe, supportive culture. There is space for creativity and self-expression and choices. Reading is deeply linked to writing. All of the language capabilities, speaking, listening, reading, writing, are woven and developed together. Yes, conventions like grammar, but also style techniques, literary techniques are taught, are drawn attention to, but they are linked to context, and they're linked to, in writing, composition and effect. Children move through cycles where they think critically, reflectively about the impact of their writing, rather than just quickly get it done and then move on to the next writing journey. And not just the what is taught, what features will make your writing good, but the process of teaching writing, the how, of how you go from ideas to first slivers on the page, to developing full text. That is deliberately and effortfully taught, by the teacher. Now, if there's your pupils, and the Opening Doors team we've tested ourselves out against this, and we think we're doing okay. We think actually, yes, this is exactly what Opening Doors is trying to do. So there's your first window into it. But equally, how do you develop teachers? I think at all, but particularly we're saying of English here, effective CPD programs. And that one bullet point was from the Slavin review. One of the best things you can do in a staff meeting after school is to simulate a journey, an English journey with your staff, and then metacognitively hover above that and say, what did we do there? How is that the same? How is that different? What are you going to take away? What are you going to deliberately practice from what we did here together? What else matters in teacher development? It's the same as what pupils need. Teachers need challenge if they're going to develop. If CPD is easy and you can apply it quickly, you are treading water. So what I know Ben and Abby absolutely know and believe is I've got to take my teachers through some difficulty and some struggle, but it becomes, when it's collaborative, becomes enjoyable. And I feel like a professional again. Teachers need, and then some of the other highlights there, teachers need choices in the way they teach. Teachers need to use pedagogical approaches, conventions, let's say, but when and how do I apply them thoughtfully? Teachers need cycles of feedback about how things are going. And teachers also need to think about the process stages of not just being a writer, but teaching writing as well. So if I were to kind of summarize what I'm trying to say here, Professor Robin Alexander, one of my favorite gods of dialogic teaching on the planet, he summed it up when I was reading Dialogic Teaching Companion the other day. We need teachers who think hard, who think creatively, who are open to challenge if we want students who think hard, who take on challenges, who think creatively. The development is nested. Big point number one, okay? I'm going to move now in my remaining time to whiz you through what we mean by an Opening Doors unit. And look at that. What we've got from the start is not a single lesson objective, but a big overarching reading question that it becomes our North Star. So all of those other little disaggregated bits, and we might look at spelling and we'll look at punctuation, certainly we'll look at word choices, we'll look at structure, we'll look at tone, we'll look at fluency. All of those things will magnetize towards this North Star of how does structure support meaning when we're exploring and creating then ourselves an extended metaphor. Just a sliver of text. Go and open the door. It's a fog. It will clear. I would invite small groups of students, fluency, bring that alive. What's the tone you need? Where are the pauses? Bring this alive, and by bringing it alive, you will bring meaning to it. What choices have you made? Are there different ways for us to lift this off the page and make it make sense? Yeah. And then to explore, we've got the simplest of vocabulary, but actually, you know, we all know what a door is and we know what fog is, but this is going to rely on children thinking symbolically. Yeah, so not just a door, but an open door. We go from denotation to the connotations that sit in the murky areas of that beneath the surface of the water. Yeah, in the iceberg, where the iceberg is bigger, actually more fascinating. So we explore open doors and fog clearing. But what about fog appearing, misting? That's a different kind of connotation. Yeah, so we think about simple words, but actually there's depth to vocabulary, not necessarily at this point about breadth. And then we bring in that metacognition. Do you think, where's this poem going to go? Is it going to have a positive or negative message from the nature of the symbols we have so far, do you think? And we ask the children, without evaluation, what's led you to think that? And they're already imagining the poem that is to come. And then we this is Bob's unit, deliberately reveals then a sliver that jolts them, that creates a little bit of cognitive conflict. Go and open the door, even if there is only the darkness ticking. Got to read that differently. There's a different kind of tone coming through. Does the darkness tick? I say year 5. No, it doesn't, Mrs. Crawford. So what's happening here? How do you feel about the darkness ticking? And honestly, from the previous slide, the open door, they feel it's quite optimistic. Yeah, it's going to be about possibilities. They're not so sure about the darkness ticking. Some of them think that's quite cozy, you know, it's like a clock ticking in the night, and it's like quite a nice reassuring sound. And some of them go, bombs tick. Okay, different connotation coming in here. So we could read this really differently. How would you read this? And now where do you think the poem's going to go? Is it going to take us on more of a tonal pathway here? Yeah, layers and textures in this message. So now I think this really is one of the real USPs of opening doors, which is we ask children to get writing quickly. We've only read 2 slivers, but we read them with real depth, symbolism coming through. Now we're going to write the next stanza. Yeah, go and open the door can be your first line, and then look at these invitational grammar mitigated adverbials, yeah, that are very modal. Perhaps. What's going to follow a perhaps? Well, sounds like something positive, doesn't it? Maybe something adventurous, magical, be a bit crazy, be a bit fabulistic there. What's going to happen with even if? What's going to follow even if, I ask them? It's going to, yeah, there's a challenge there. You'd only open the door and go, well, even if there's something that's not quite so welcoming. So what you're going to have there that's a bit unsettling, already got that texture. Maybe there'll be a deck chair. Maybe we get something that's quite invitational, relaxing, yeah? So they begin to write like the poet really early on. What have we got on the page there? Tapestry of, what does Deborah Myhill say? We're playing with language like putty here. They've got some putty emerging on their page. So let's pause. We have read, we have written. Let's read each other's writing now. Let's come in with a critical eye. Yeah. So we ask them to look at each other's in small groups, in pairs, look at the choices the writers made about, look at all these aspects, line, layout, pace, tone, image choice, the pathway of image choices, yeah, the optimistic, negative, pessimistic overtones that we might have. So we might stay with that for some time. And this is the point at which writing is really taught. Children are really open to playing with that putty and making changes at this point without having to fill a page with writing. Yeah. Equally, technicality, you know, punctuation marks, spelling, capital letters, all of that kind of thing. Again, there's space to pay attention to that holistic English. Then we come back to that prediction. We've got 2 slivers in this poem. It's going to end. Really good to get that from groups and look at different possibilities before we do the final full reveal of the wonderful, originally written in Czech Republic writer Miroslav Holub. So this is a translation. Go and open the door, maybe outside there's a tree or a wood, a garden or a magic city. Go and open the door, maybe a dog's rummaging. Maybe you'll see a face or an eye or the picture of a picture. Quite absurd. Ooh. Go and open the door. If there's a fog, it will clear. Go and open the door even. There's only the darkness ticking. Even there's only the hollow wind. Even if nothing is there, go and open the door. At least there'll be a draft. And I still don't know how to read that final stanza. That's what I say to children when I'm teaching this, is like, what on earth is happening there? How do you read that? What is the tone? And some of them love it and some of them hate it. What on earth? We're so disappointed when we talk about bathos. Yes, here is a bathetic ending, which has pulled the rug from under our feet. We thought we'd have some kind of crescendo, big ending there. What have we got? It's almost nothing. Yeah. So then we come back to our North Star, our big question. This could reach into GCSE, couldn't it? But here we are in year 5. How does structure support meaning with an extended metaphor? Hardest question first, Bob would say. But then, so Abby and Ben may talk about big questions and radial questions. Why I've popped this up is these radials are like little stepping stones, little slivers of the big question that will help children enter that big analytical, evaluative question. Yeah, so it could be something as easy as pick your favourite image, say why you like it. Yeah, there's an entry point. Or you could move to something more challenging as map the tonal journey. How do the tones change and what's leading you in the poem to read that with a different tone in your mind. Whistle stop, sorry, but we're getting an overview. So that's what we've done with the big question, the radials. From those reading responses, what we are getting then is, well, that's what a great extended metaphor poem would do, wouldn't it? So we can draw from our responses to the reading these kinds of aspects that we could include in our own writing. So the success criteria is not pulled off the web, yeah, or pulled off a genre list. This is what we include in poetry, but pulled from a deep analytical read of a beautiful literary text, yeah, with choices. Is this what you want to include? But there's far more than grammar there and vocabulary, isn't there? It becomes far more literary. So I'm only going to show you one here before I pass on to Abby, because this really, I still sort of almost have tears in my eyes when I think about this. I was teaching this with a 10-year-old when we returned from lockdown in that spring 2021, and Go and Open the Door felt like the best poem to teach. You know, let's go back out into the world. And some of us feel great about that, and some of us really don't. And Sophia wanted to go back and learn in her living room with her dog under the coffee table and her mum bringing in biscuits. And she was not sure about being back at school at all. But this, you know, it almost became like therapy for her to work through and really make meaning from her feelings using this extended metaphor. So she got her dog in there. Yeah. Even if you leave your house, your warmth, and there's the COVID rainbow that came through, perhaps there'll be a rainbow waiting for your arrival. And she didn't want a pathetic ending, even if it seems unreachable. You must go. She wanted this epic triumph at the end of her poem. Okay, so sorry, whistle stop. Sorry, I couldn't simulate that with you people and slow it down. But hopefully now you've got some little catchwords for what we mean by an opening doors journey before I pass on to the real experts who make this work with their teams in school, and invite Abby to unmute there.
Thank you, Leah. I was making notes because I haven't seen that one before. I'm excited. I was like, "Ooh, open the door!" That's exciting. Yes, thank you, Leah. I'm very excited. I will basically talk to anybody who will listen to me natter on about opening doors. So it's nice to be sharing with people who are interested. So I have implemented opening doors. I started I went to the first workshop in September 2022. As Leah kind of said, it was coming off of the back of lockdown, and there was kind of this feeling of panic and, oh my goodness, the kind of gaps that we've got. And I will never forget it, actually. What Leah said was, the last thing we need to be doing is sort of making everything easier to plug the gaps. We should actually be doing the opposite. We should be making everything more ambitious, because then you don't put a ceiling on what the children are learning. And that resonated a lot with me. So she had me from that moment. And I think that was probably the first thing that she said. So yeah, we started, I went in 2022, kind of gained sort of my own knowledge about it, and was hooked immediately. The school had previously sort of dabbled in a little bit of it, had some of the books, but no one had kind of picked it up and ran with it. So I was excited to do that. So in the 2022-2023 academic year, we decided, as a leadership team, we decided that I would support year 3, and I was in year 5 at that time. So we would kind of implement it then. And it was very much a, let's explore, let's play, let's see what works, let's see what we really like about this. And actually, we just got so into it, which was obviously great. And it was really inspiring. And actually, the amazing thing about it was it had this immediate impact. You know, as Leah has just shown you, the units do have this immediate impact. It's this kind of presentation of this tiny sliver, and then this really important question that the children focus on. And already, if you're asking those correct questions and you're talking about things like tone and fluency, these children come out with these most amazing things that you're like, oh my goodness, if I just hadn't asked you that question, I would never have known that was, you know, that was what you were thinking. So that was really good. So it was really nice to have that sort of immediate impact. But then even now, I'm still like, oh my gosh, I still find so much to learn. And even then I was like, oh, I'm going to do this poem. This is really exciting. So then last academic year, we went full implementation of opening doors across all year groups, which was good because we were moderated in year 6. And I will talk a bit more about that later on. And now I'm still going with the continuous CPD for staff, and we're really developing it and kind of picking things out that are saying, oh, let's change that one, or let's move this one around. And there are still a couple of units which aren't opening doors, and I'm tackling those head on, which is exciting. So, and the nice thing is, Leah's going to be sick of me because I'm joining her Key Stage 1 course this year. So I'm very excited because we're going to be working with our infant school. I'm a junior school, so we are going to be working with the infant school because they are very impressed with the results that we've got for the last few years, which is great. And yes, very, very exciting. So moving on to the next slide. Thank you, Leah. The way I have implemented it at Powner has been very much talking with staff and making sure that they sort of understand that this is a different way of doing it, because I feel very strongly, as do lots of people to do with opening doors, that the curriculum since 2014 is very much a writing by numbers and patching up the holes and throwing mud and hoping it's going to stick. And this very much kind of, does this piece of writing have fronted adverbials, and does it have modal verbs, and does it have this and doesn't have that? And it takes the holisticness out of it, I suppose, the kind of flow, the creativity. And I felt very strongly that was always what was holding me back as a professional as well. I very much thought, I don't understand how to put this creativity into children's writing and how to teach children to be creative. That was what I found really difficult personally. So I obviously came across the opening doors, and we had insets with Leah. We had some staff on the opening doors courses just so that they could kind of get more of a feel of really what it was. And then Leah thankfully came in for inset and staff meetings. A lot of it was me planning alongside staff to sort of explain and show how you actually would put a unit together. So some bits we will take from the opening doors units, and we bring in some of our own ideas, which was really nice. And as Leah says, it's very much about staff and subject knowledge and working through it together. So we go into PPA, and me personally as well, I very much fight for my spot, and I go, right, I want to talk about what we're looking at, because if you work through it together first, you come out with it's just like the children do, all of this amazing stuff that actually you would never have decided on your own. You never would have found this stuff on your own. So there's very much a working alongside staff in talking about not only the content, but the teaching strategies to support the children. So if we work through it first as a staff, then it goes so much better in the classroom. And it's really nice to see teachers light up again about English, which is really nice, because previously it was kind of this, oh, we have 5,000 objectives to cover and I don't know how to do it. And so it's really nice that it's sort of moved forward in that way. The impact on pupils has been unbelievable. The nicest thing is that it has impacted our lowest 20% the most. You know, I'm going to be sharing with you a PP child, but actually you can only imagine what all the rest of the children, you know, ARE and GD are kind of achieving, but this is the kind of biggest impact we've had. So this is a young girl, she's a PP child, she's very much a reluctant reader, huge parental disengagement, and both her parents were actually illiterate, so it was really difficult for her. She came to me in year 5 and she was working towards through her entire career up until that point. And she was just very, very quiet, very low self-esteem, not very confident, just had a lot of barriers in front of her. So this was the kind of typical stuff that we would get. I think the thing that jumps out at everybody is that she actually can't copy which correctly 3 times, which is a bit of a shame, but never mind. And we've just got, which I imagine what lots of people have seen, is this kind of, yes, she has some of the aspects that we were looking for, this kind of checklist of, have you got an opener and have you got an adverb? And yes, she's got a couple of those things, but what she has done here effectively is regurgitated some facts. So she's taken some of the facts that we've talked about the jaguar to do with the rainforest, and she is just literally regurgitating them as best that she can. Mind-blowingly, these cats are not only dangerous, but they are, and you know, it's just this, I'm just going to repeat what I've heard, and that sort of total lack of creativity. So we worked very hard with her on lots of opening doors units. This one was, it went very well, and it was actually one of the first ones that I did with Leah. I'm hoping that Leah can see that there was a little bit of Great Expectations, Miss Havisham in there. And not only is her writing just so, well, creepy in this case, but the way that she changed in herself was kind of the biggest impact that we saw. She just came alive, and all of a sudden she kind of said things that in these discussions that would come out, and you go, oh my goodness, I can't believe you've just got these amazing ideas that you didn't feel confident enough to share. I just love the kind of heart in mouth. I slowly crept inside the ominous tomb. It's not just the vocabulary, it's the way she's putting everything forward, talking about things staring deep into her soul. That word ghastly, obviously I'm hoping that will be a nice big tick box for Leah. The ghastly shiver that ran down my spine like a curse was threatening me. It was just this, everybody was creeped out, and I'd read it like, oh my gosh, this is really scary, I'm not sure I can read more of this. And she was really confident. And another piece, which was slightly later in the year, in May, again, it's just this pride that she was chucking everything at this, and all of a sudden she just was like, I'm a writer, and my voice is worthy of being heard, and this is what I want to say. And this was the Ernie Pyle unit, which we were all completely obsessed with, and we loved this because it's sort of this non-fiction eyewitness account that we all did and we really got into, but hers particularly stood out to me for the fact that it's just this massive transformation from this person who just regurgitated stuff to actually she's very carefully selecting through our radial questions and through our discussions in class and looking at these different texts. She's very carefully selecting tiny slivers of the Ernie Pyle eyewitness account and going, what do I want to do with this, and how do I want my reader to feel? Everything is about how she wanted her reader to feel, because this is how she would feel when she read it. So very inspiring from somebody who has these huge barriers, and actually we were able to remove those for her. So generally across the school, it's it's very, very positive. They love the old books. They love the fact that they can tell, their parents, oh, we were looking at Little Women and I felt really sorry for Amy because her teacher was being really horrible to her, and she was really upset. And did you know they got caned? It's these really lovely conversations that they start to have, and everything that we do obviously is all about the effect on the reader. How do you want your reader to feel? And it's really supporting them and understanding. As a reader, not a writer, you need to think about this, and like Leah says, the tone and the fluency, and how should this be read and how should this be delivered. And we're not using this unbelievable vocabulary all the time. It can often be these really, really simple words, and it's the dialogic talk that happens in the classroom that's been the biggest impact on these lowest 20% of children. If they can engage in this dialogic talk, and you can get them to engage in this dialogic talk about these unbelievable slivers of writing, that's where they learn the best, we have found. So yeah, they find the extracts hard, but they fly through them together. And the impact on staff has been enormous. It's been a journey. We are still on that journey. We still have staff who are a little bit unsure. And it's my job to get those last couple of people to really, really buy into this. But it is a lot of, thinking, as Leah said initially, and it's a lot of planning and thinking carefully. But I've always said to the staff, for every hour that you would have spent on sort of an old style of English planning, you might spend maybe an hour and a half on some opening doors one, but the impact that you will have will be 10 times more effective. It just is. And the people that have bought into that have gone, oh my gosh, you're totally right. I've been teaching for 10 years and only now do I feel super confident about teaching the English to our high standards. And those are the ones that come to me and go, oh my gosh, look at this. This is the child and this is amazing. And they've done this. And it's really, really fulfilling when those people come to my door and in the middle of a lesson, and I'm like, is someone with you? I'm not sure. But yeah, it's really, really inspiring for those people. So that's
Thank you so much, Evie. And it does, the planning speeds up.
It does. Oh, absolutely it does. And
as you get used to it. But actually that time spent with the text.
Absolutely.
Reading the text, Bob would say, for teaching, reading that in depth and looking for the scope of teaching and scope for teaching in the text.
For
like,
sure.
Don't ever skip that.
Sure.
But then the other stuff comes to you more quickly. Yes, I'm going to, as Rebecca said, if there are questions for myself or Abby, pop them in the chat. It might be that we reply to them by email that Rebecca will send you afterwards, but they occur to you, do pop them in. But I feel we do need to pass on to Ben for his experience.
Hiya. So I've not spoken to Abby before that, but it's interesting to see just how similar our journeys have been, actually. So I'm going to echo a few of those messages. I'll just share my screen. Oh, it's not letting me share this time. Can you see what's on my screen yet?
Not this time, no.
Oh, hold on, that's it. Can you see that?
Yeah, perfect.
Oh, fantastic. So first of all, just a bit of context. Doncaster, South Yorkshire, it's one of the most deprived areas of the country. I think it's 6th in the list. We're just on the border, so close to the rural side. So there's some affluent areas nearby, but we do still get some children from quite deprived backgrounds as well. About 400 pupils, predominantly white British. We're an LTE hub school. I'm not sure what people know about that, but that's, in fact, I'll not start talking about that or I'll be here all night. But it marries a lot of the pedagogies that Opening Doors uses with LTEs. So we already had a few things in place which helped us to deliver Opening Doors. And our end of Key Stage 2 results are always, very annoyingly, about the same, and they're probably just above national, but we think we can do better than that for our children. And the one thing that always lets the results down is the combined. And within combined, it's always the writing, which stops children from getting combined scores to make them secondary ready. So that's why we looked for something to do with writing. We tried quite a few different things, to be honest, and everything seemed that we could find, which was off the peg, was kind of uninspiring. It just didn't feel right. And when we found Opening Doors, we thought, do you know what, this is for us, we can make it work. So when we first started to implement Opening Doors, I think that picture sums up quite well what the classroom looked like. We started off Well, first of all, I started off just trialing it with my class, and I have to admit that the first few lessons were absolute disasters because I don't think I understood the pedagogies properly. But by trialing that, learning with the children, I was telling them I'm learning just as you are. We got there in the end, and now we've rolled it across school. When we started to roll it across school, we found that these same challenges were coming up in each classroom for the children. It was the vocabulary. Sometimes they just had no experience of the words before. They'd got a limited experience of both their world, knowledge of the world, and also the reading experience as well. So it was difficult for them to draw on different books and make comparisons. Often, especially with year 5 and 6, the texts we used were older texts and they struggled with the context. I'm thinking we did a piece of writing set in the 1700s. It was related to the slave trade and they expected laptops and phones and things. So they really struggled to kind of get in the shoes of the writer they were trying to portray. The expectation absolutely rocketed, and some children found that really difficult, both the expectation of what they could read, but also what they could write, and the volume as well, again, of what they could read and write. So there were lots of challenges here, and we knew that in order to fix these for the children, we needed to make sure all the teachers were confident. So we began by delivering some training, and like you said, Leah, the most effective training was when I recreated lessons with the teachers, and we were lucky enough to have you in school as well. And teachers could see actually what it's about. Because I think it's one of those things, it's quite difficult to read and really get your head around it. You've got to see it in action to actually understand how powerful it can be. So when we delivered this to teachers, we found we had exactly the same problems with the teachers as we did with the pupils. This time, however, it was more vocabulary. How do we teach that to an effective way? Quite often the old texts which we were using to start with had lots of challenging vocabulary, but it wasn't always long convoluted words which children didn't understand. For those, we could just give the definition. It was often words like one that came up this week was the word jaw, and children didn't understand that word to be used in different contexts. The word shadow came up in the same poem, and they all knew what a shadow was, but when the shadow of a smile crept across someone's face, they had all sorts of images happening there. So that was one challenge. How do we teach vocabulary effectively? Experience, not all teachers love reading as much as each other. So that was quite a challenge sometimes. Again, the context, the historical context, some teachers didn't read older literature, so struggled with that. The expectation and the volume of planning and delivery, at first, I think it seemed quite overwhelming, quite daunting. So we needed some work around that. So at our school, we pride ourselves on being research-based. So I needed to find some research basically to say to them, this is worthwhile. You need to persevere through the challenge. And this is the first piece that I always used with them. And it's basically saying that if things are challenging, if things are difficult, that's good, because only by struggling with something is it going to stick. I think sometimes rather than keep the challenge, it was easier just to make things easier so that children could see success, which, fair enough, every child has to see success, but by lowering that ceiling, you kind of, it's artificial success, in my opinion. So that was the first piece of research. However, I think the most impactful one with staff was this one from Bob, actually, which is saying that by pitching high, you're including all, and this is about social justice. So being in Doncaster, which is quite a deprived area, I think they struck a chord with a lot of teachers, and they started to think, our children deserve this. We need to give them the same experiences in literature as the children at the private schools or in more affluent areas, and so on. So this is the one which we always come back to when we do training and remind ourselves the children, deserve this. And this level of challenge, which I'm talking about, we've had to take way back down, even into EYFS. So we found that lots of children were not knowing very traditional nursery rhymes, fairy tales, and things like that. Quite often in Key Stage 1, they were looking at different perspectives, so the wolf's perspective of Little Red Riding Hood and so on. But because they didn't understand the traditional tales and nursery rhymes from the very off, it just kind of crumbled from there onwards. So we've had to work from EYFS, really building a secure foundation of some really traditional text, so we can slowly build on that each year. And we've planned this over the last 2 years, and we're starting now to really see the benefit of that. So I think Abby mentioned this as well. The thing that had the biggest impact on the children in the classroom was creating a dialogic classroom. So we made sure every lesson was collective, or everybody worked together. It was reciprocal, supportive, cumulative, purposeful. I'm not going into too much detail of that, but we found that by creating this dialogic classroom, it just opened up so much opportunity for children who struggled to write, struggled to communicate. Suddenly we could hear every single voice, and suddenly people realised every voice is valuable. We can all contribute to this. We got that very well embedded in classrooms quite early on. However, on reflection, we could see that in the classroom, but did we see it in CPD and training with teachers? And so a huge push which we've had is to make sure that all CPD sessions are also dialogic as well. I think teachers are quite guilty of being able to teach an incredible lesson, getting everybody involved. As soon as they have to deliver CPD, they stand at the front and just deliver it. So we've kind of turned our CPD on the head with that. So just on the next slide. When we first started to implement opening doors, we found immediately the greatest depth children, they flourished with this. They loved the challenge, they grabbed hold of it and just absolutely ran with it. And so initially, lots of teachers were saying, the work is too hard, it's not relevant, it's too difficult for the children. I kept having to refer back to those 2 pieces of research, which I just shared there, and say, we need to trust the process, we need to persevere with this. Because I was a little bit ahead of everybody with having delivered it to my class for about 6 months longer than everybody else, I said, trust the process. Thankfully, in time, because we did trust the process, we did start to see the benefits for all pupils. And in fact, I think, like Abby said, the biggest difference, although the greatest depth children kind of grasped it soonest, it was those bottom 20% who made the biggest progress by the time, we'd rolled out a few units and so on. So this slide here, I think, sums up quite well an opening doors unit, which we do in year 6, which is all about describing a teacher who catches the child and punishes them. So if we look at the books, Matilda, we would have once said Key Stage 1, Demon Headmaster Key Stage 2. Little Women, Jane Eyre, we might have said that's secondary, that's too highbrow for the children maybe. But what we've done is managed to include texts which start, even in year 6, texts like Matilda, which you might think are quite Key Stage 1, starting with something the children have got knowledge about, something which they probably see the film, they've read before, starting with Miss Trunchbull in there, then introducing them to the Demon Headmaster, which is accessible for Key Stage 2. But slowly, by building this up, finding similarities between the texts, comparing them in depth, they were then able to access Little Women, and they could compare them to Trunchbull with the teacher there. And then we were able to push on to the teacher in Jane Eyre as well. And by the end, the work was absolutely phenomenal. We were moderated last year, and they could see in the books, even in those working towards children, they could see the vocabulary which was being drawn from much more ambitious texts than they'd seen in any other school in the area, they said. So vocabulary absolutely rocketed with opening doors. And given time, other things started to develop much better as well. Finally then, how we develop staff. These are just a few things which I've done in the school, which I think have made a big impact. The first thing, you need to know your pupils and your teachers. I think you need to pick very strategically which teachers you get on board first to kind of disseminate it throughout the school. There's always a few who are a challenge, it's like a class, isn't it? A few who are a challenge and a few who jumped on board straight away. And by working with those who jumped on board straight away, we could build some enthusiasm. And now we have weekly coaching sessions and everybody brings work, everybody's excited. And the level of conversation in those sessions has gone from me stood at the front just explaining things to now it's difficult for me to get a word in edgeways. Everybody wants to contribute, everyone's got lots to share. which is fantastic. So we have weekly coaching sessions, which are always focused on English. So we might do things in there like plan together. If a year group's finding a particular challenge with making a text accessible, for example, they might bring it along. We can all have a look at it, get all our heads together. I think when it comes to planning, I think this has been mentioned before as well, by planning together, you hear so many different ideas and perspectives that it makes the planning so much richer. And even when you deliver to the children, they come up with some incredible ideas, which makes you think, right, I need to edit my planning actually for next time, because they make you see things through different and more exciting ways, which is fantastic. Another thing we've done is to celebrate children's progress. So rather than being product focused, we're now much more process focused. So it doesn't matter if the work at the end doesn't look immaculate, because children have wanted to go back. If in 2 weeks' time they want to go back to a poem and actually change something, that's encouraged. That's fantastic, because they're clearly engaged and see the purpose for it. Another thing we've done is we've totally shifted how we mark our writing. We now give targets for transcriptional and compositional elements. We found some children who struggle with handwriting, for example, or spelling. Every single lesson they were being told, work on your handwriting, check your spellings. You can only say that to a child so many times before they just give up and think, I can't do nice handwriting, I can't spell. So we always make sure we pick up on some positives, both in the transcription element of the work and the composition. And I think all those things combined, all those things I've just whizzed through, I think have created such a culture shift in our school, that now writing is something which is exciting. Children see writing, creative writing, as an art now. So when they come into class, they categorise it with music and with art and with drama, things which they've always loved, but writing used to be, oh, it's like maths. It's one of those difficult things where you have to really focus and sit in silence. Now it's seen as very creative, very exciting, and a way to give them a voice and express themselves. And then the very last slide, if there is time, because I'm just conscious of what time it is this piece of writing, which I've sent to Leah before. I have to show it off to everybody. This is from a boy in my class last year who was, he was okay at writing when he came, but he had absolutely no interest in it. He'd much rather be on the football field, much rather be with his mates. And by working with him at with some really ambitious texts here he was writing a diary entry all about being in a storm. But this was set 300 years ago. It was about the man who wrote Amazing Grace, if you know that story. By working with him, really challenging him, he suddenly realised writing wasn't just ticking boxes and giving the teacher what they wanted. It gave him a voice, and he could play around with it, and he started to realise just how creative writing could be. So whenever things are tough, which they sometimes are in schools, and you've got 1,000 objectives to meet in writing and so on, I always put this up in a staff meeting and say, just think back to that research about social justice. We need to make sure all children are reading ambitious texts and getting the chance to discuss these in depth. Because if we didn't, children like this boy here would never in a million years have dreamed of writing something as incredible as this. So yeah, I think that's everything then, Leah.
That's a beautiful note to end on. Thank you so much, Ben. I realise that we have gone over time, so Rebecca is going to share the slides with you afterwards. If you've got your mobile phone and you want to capture the QR code, there is that Crown House are really generously saying people who've come this afternoon to our session get 30% off our guidebook. Don't know why that's slipping off the end of the slide there. Opening Doors to Ambitious Primary English, usually about £18, I think, but so it becomes incredibly affordable with the code Leah30. I'm not sure why. You'll also get this slide, which has got hyperlinks there to Bob's site, which is just a wealth of resources and expertise and blogs. My blogs, which are particularly on PD and approaches to PD. Link to the books, link to 15 units where myself, Bob and Verity narrated. So give you a little window into some of the units that can be used in staff meetings. And I picked the same slide as you, Ben, from the Bob. And there's others in the team. So all of that ways forward resources, if we've caught you, yeah, and Ben and Abby have inspired you to want to open the door into your own journey, there'll be ways forward when that PowerPoint reaches you via Rebecca. End of.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Leah and Abby and Ben. That was fascinating. And this session is part of a series that we're running with Open Doors. So have a look on our website for recordings of previous ones. And we've got another couple of things coming up. So stay in touch, and hopefully I'll see you all again at another event. Thank you.
Thank you so much for hosting.